What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Fall Obsession podcast episode. My name is Sam Thrash. I'm your show host over here. Appreciate you guys tuning in. This week, we have a very unique episode for you guys. Our guest is a United States Air Force veteran, Anthony Dyer. He was a Special Missions Aviator in the Air Force. He flew hundreds of high-profile, high-risk missions while he was over there. He is the author of the book Moonchild, where he tells his story and talks about all the things that he had to deal with both over there and coming back. He is a very inspiring individual, very passionate about sharing his story, and I'm very grateful that he was willing to come on our show to share that story and to talk to people about his journey and everything. We spend a lot of time not just talking about his military service and some specifics to the missions that he flew over there, but also the transition that military veterans, even first responders, deal with when they're coming back from literal war, in a sense, back into normal, what we know as everyday life, and the challenges that come with that. So Anthony has some very valuable perspectives, some very encouraging perspectives when it comes to that. And I thought that this would be a really unique and kind of outside the box episode for us to bring here on Fall Obsession Podcast. We actually have the Eve Bailey media team to thank for helping set this up. They actually saw our Veteran Hunt podcast from when we took our two veteran hunters on a deer hunt here at Fall Obsession last year, and they thought that this would be a good avenue to be able to give Anthony yet another audience to share his story with, and we are happy to do so. So not your typical hunting and outdoor show this week, but still one that is very important, very valuable, and I hope you guys enjoy this podcast. Got a few discount codes for you guys before we get to our conversation with Anthony. These are from the partners who help make Fall Obsession Podcast happen every week for you guys. The first one is our friends over at Hoot Camo. Love wearing our Hoot gear. It's a staple here at Fall Obsession. And if you guys want to get into a set of Hoot camouflage or even their other lifestyle or fishing apparel, go to hootcamo.com. Use the code FallObsession15, and that will save you some money at checkout. Bear River Archery is the official archery pro shop of the Fall Obsession team here in North Texas. Justin and the guys over there, they take great care of us. Can't say enough about them. If you are local in the North Texas area, you need to go to Van Alstyne and check out Bear River Archery. Let Justin know that Fall Obsession sent you. If you're not local and you still want to give him your business, shop online with him, then use the code FALLOBSESSION, all one word lowercase, when you check out with him, and that will save you guys some money. Tacticam Reveal is the official cell cam of us here at Fall Obsession. We've been using them for a few years now. I personally have used several other brands of trail cams over the years. Nothing compares to what the Tacticam Reveal can do for you. The information that you can track in the Reveal app on your phone, it's incredible. Guys, if you aren't using Reveal cell cameras, you're missing out. Go check them out today. Finally, the Outdoor Call Radio app is another podcast partner. Outdoors Dan, he has an app where you can stream tons of different hunting shows and podcasts on a loop every single day. It's an app that you can download right to your phone for free, and you will find Fall Obsession podcast streaming on that app on Mondays, the same day as our new publications. So go download it today and start streaming the Outdoor Call Radio app for free. If this is your first time listening to a Fall Obsession podcast episode, thank you. Make sure that you hit that follow or subscribe button, whatever they have up there at the top for you guys. Turn your notifications on if that's an option. That way, you guys know every time we drop a new episode. You can also catch the podcast videos on our YouTube channel if you like watching our conversations with our guests. And make sure you subscribe to the YouTube while we're over there, because we also put out shows, films, gear reviews, a ton of other educational content that could be beneficial for you guys. We are a hunting and outdoor media production company. We cover hundreds of different topics in the hunting and outdoor world. And like I said, information available for everyone. FallObsession.com is the website where you can find everything at. You can pick you up a hat or a t-shirt while you're there if you want to support the brand. Make sure you follow us on social media, wherever you guys are. We are probably there also. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We're on all those platforms posting daily updates from our team. So again, go check that out. And finally, if you guys are not streaming shows on Carbon TV, you need to be. Carbon TV is a free hunting and outdoor streaming platform for you that holds hundreds of different shows, podcasts, films, and live feeds from creators in the industry. You will find 4 different Fall Obsession produced shows on that platform. This podcast, our staff-inspired video podcast series called Couch Chats, is on Carbon TV, as well as our 2 different hunting shows titled Texas Dirt and Midwest Mindset. Guys, go check out Carbon TV and start streaming today. All right, that's it from me. We're going to get this conversation with Anthony going. Hope you guys enjoy. You are listening to another Fall Obsession podcast.
The power lies within that middle ground.
Hunting transformed my life.
I think you have to be built somewhat different.
That Dale Brisby's a super puncher.
When you get Pop-Tarts on the next Walmart order? I'm serious.
Because to come into this country and stay dedicated to that, it was pretty awesome.
If it's only for one, then you've done your job.
We have to do what's right for the wildlife, and that's our responsibility as hunters.
Fall Obsession Podcast.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Fall Obsession Podcast episode. I'm Sam Thrash, hosting you guys. Got a very unique and awesome guest conversation in store for you guys today. My guest is Anthony Dyer. He is a United States Air Force Combat Special Missions Aviator, author of the book Moonchild. We've got a lot of awesome stuff to unpack here, man. Welcome to the show, Anthony. Happy to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me, Sam. It's a privilege and honor to be here, brother.
Well, we're happy to have you, and above all else, man, we appreciate your service and everything. We have a special place for veterans in our heart for sure, and it's always good to have a guy like you on the show. So, thank you.
Thanks, sir. It's always good to get on a Texas show. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, Texas show. There you go. Well, man, I know I mentioned just a couple things in the intro there briefly, but man, you got a pretty hefty resume when it comes to your military service and everything. So just give our listeners a little bit of background on you and who you are and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no problem. So I grew up in a small town called Silva, North Carolina. It's deep in Appalachia there in western North Carolina. And I tell people, joking around, growing up, I remember I could probably throw a baseball across my whole town. It's sort of a joke how small it is. But since the community was strong and as far as outdoor stuff, I remember if I wanted to go fishing, I'd literally just walk a half mile down the road to the Tuckasegee River and do some of that. And, I get to a fork in the road there. And when I was 17, my dad gives me the typical dad talk of like, son, you're about to be a man. It's time to, get a job, go to college or get out. And there I was, July 18th of 2000 on my first fixed wing flight from Charlotte, North Carolina to San Antonio, Texas for basic military training there. And as far as jobs in the Air Force goes, I had a few of them. Those guys seemed to never be satisfied where I was at the time, but I did my first 5 years as a weapons loader, and then my second 5 years as a Air Force firefighter. Went to the Lewis F. Garland DoD Fire Academy there in San Angelo, Texas, and then from my 2010 to 2011, 2021, about 11 and a half years there as a flying job, and what was then Aero Gunner now is a Special Missions Aviator on the mighty AC-130 H model Spectre gunship, as well as the H-860G Pave Hawk rescue helicopter.
Wow, that's awesome. You excuse me. My ears perked up a little bit when you said Air Force firefighter. That's what I do, not in the military, but that's what I do professionally for a career. I'm a firefighter, first responder here in Texas. So, talk to me a little bit about what that's like, because that's just a personal interest of mine at this point, as far as what being a military firefighter in that extent looks like.
Yeah, no problem. So after I finished the fire academy there in San Angelo for the DoD, I went to Charleston Air Force Base, South Carolina, and that was approximately 5 years of being in the fire service there. And it's all very geared towards the Air Force side of things, like, the ARF type stuff. And you'll see us come out in our, people call them the baked potato suits, the aluminum foil looking on the outside and stuff like that. And the good thing about being on base in a DoD facility, everything's always fire safe. And I may have seen 3 good structure fires, the whole time I did that. I eventually did get my EMT basic at one point, and every now and then I had to deal with some stuff like that. And then mostly it was like standing by engine runs with the ARF trucks and stuff like that, where you could basically have this truck in I think it was a P-23 if I remember the name of it, but it would have a 250 feet like straight stream of the AFFF foam, and then you could do the dispersion type of pattern as well if you wanted to. But yeah, it was a awesome community. Some of the best memories of my career was in that firehouse there, 24 on, 24 off, and we did the Kelly Day thing back then. Yep. A lot of pranks. I had to develop a really good arsenal of pranks from that world. Yeah. And Yeah, and I took those in later on to the 16th Special Operations Squadron on the gunship, and it served me well. So good men and women in the fire service.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. It's always a fun time, and yeah, some of the best people you'll ever work with, and I can speak to the prank side. I've been both the giver and the recipient on on some of those, and
Oh,
man,
yeah.
there's some of them that just stick with you. We were sitting around the firehouse table my last tour that I worked, and yeah, we were we were just all bringing up the old pranks that we pulled in years past and everything, and it's pretty fun to be a part of
Oh
those
yeah,
and mess
man.
around.
Yeah, I remember the first one they got me with was how you anticipate a call a lot of times, like you're waiting for this thing to happen, right? And I was new, and they put the saran wrap on the door frame, and they did like a fake call, and they'd put honey and all kinds of cinnamon, God knows what else on it. And I run out there for this call that didn't happen, just smothered by this saran wrap of just crap on it. But and I remember one time there was this guy, he lived across the street, and we all had the same Kelly Day on a Tuesday, and this was like towards Goose Creek in South Carolina. And this guy, man, had an explosive temper we worked with, and that's like blood and shark's water in that world. And we had ordered like 10 pizzas from like Pizza Hut or something, and just sit across the street and watch him just explode on this poor pizza guy when the pizza guy would show up. So yeah, yes, there was always some sort of dick and fart jokes, you name it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Your first one there that you told me, that reminded me of one not that long ago. We had a rookie at the firehouse, and he was riding the ambulance that day, and he made some comment earlier in the day on how nothing scares him. Young, kind of hot-headed guy. Nothing can scare me. It's like, all right, well, we'll see about that. And so he's waiting for something all day long, and we just go about our day. And then after lights out, he's in bed, and we get some of the other guys in on it. We get the rigs running, lights going, everything in the bay, like we're about to run a call. I hide in the back in his seat in the ambulance wearing a white sheet and a clown mask. And one of the guys runs in there, slaps his feet, and is like, "Hey, you coming? Like you just missed a call." And so he comes running out there, sees all the rigs running, all the lights on. He's freaking out, just one because he thinks he just missed it. And then he opens the door, and scary clown comes flying out at him. He fell on his rear, and it was pretty entertaining for sure.
Yeah, that was some awesome moments in that part of my life, man. I miss it, to be honest with you. So
Oh yeah, it's a good time, man. So, excuse me, I want to dive a little bit deeper, getting back to your story a little bit, into kind of exactly, you briefly kind of touched on just the journey getting to being, into the Special Missions Aviator world and everything like that. But talk a little bit more in detail about that, on as far as how you found, I don't know if finding a home in that is the best way to say it, but you talked about how you were always looking for something else, like nothing was good enough. How did you land there in the end?
yeah, that's a great question. I appreciate it. Now, I was actually home on leave, when I was still in the fire service in Charleston, and then I was in North Carolina, with some friends at a pizza joint. And I remember, I get to a point where I'm looking out and I see the same cracks in the road, and I just remember thinking like this same road's been there since I can remember, with the same cracks in it. And that's where I sort of had this realization, like, man, like you can't take nothing with you when you die, man. Like, there's no U-Haul behind the hearse. And sort of basically what I'm getting at is the only thing you can leave is how people remember you. And I wanted to be remembered for a guy who eventually got in the fight, at least at the highest capacity that I could. And I went back to the firehouse there in Charleston. And I remember there's a book called Chosen Soldier by Dick Couch. And in the very beginning of that book, there's the Isaiah 6:8, the send me verse is what I call it. And I just remember thinking like, man, like that's it. That's everything. All you can do really is leave behind is somewhat of a big footprint and a legacy. And at that point, I decided to get in the fight, and then joined the mighty 16th Special Operations Squadron on the AC-130 gunship. And sort of about 2013, I believe the Air Force, what they did was, I call it a Swiss Army knife in the sky. So they combined the flight engineer, the aerial gunner, and the loadmaster jobs on the AC-130 gunship, and made this, like I said, sort of Swiss Army knife in the sky, jack of all trades type thing. And it's an awesome experience. The whole role behind the gunship is to make sure those super ninjas get home, the ones I sort of talk about in the book there, and to provide that close air support for unconventional forces. And there's letters all around that squadron where, like, men and women thank you for your close air support. They got to go home and see their family. And there's one where a ranger holding his baby girl. I'll never forget. It was sort of my cornerstone of my why all those years. He got to go home and see his baby girl. And you look at those letters a lot differently when you're older and you have a family, as opposed to when I was just young and full of adrenaline, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So you guys are like, you say Swift's Army knife the sky, but you guys are basically at the ready, constantly ready to swoop in if things go south for guys on the ground. Is that my understanding correctly?
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting that. And there's really two types of gunship missions. There's one where like sort of what you're saying. There's sort of like insurance if you think about it that way. Where like there's this operation going on. There's some heavy hitter. They're going to go bag and tag on the ground and scoop them up or capture or kill type thing, right? And you're there, and then sometimes all hell breaks loose. Sometimes it doesn't, depending on the situation. And then there's others. I remember we had pagers back in like 2011, man. Believe it or not, and like certain numbers meant certain things, and we would scramble alert, like the emergency launch, sort of what you were getting at. And then there'd be moments where like there's troops in contact where the guys on the ground been getting shot at all day, and uh, they could start hearing our props come in, and the enemy also hears the props come in of those four fans of freedom, as they call them. And they start become squirters, and they start running like bees, and they know at that point it's over for them. And so I always loved that. I always chased that feeling of just those three beautiful words, clear to engage. And it's a moment I can never really put in words, and then you get to see the fruits of your labor, and those guys get home to their family.
Yeah. Excuse me. That's I can imagine that's a pretty just knowing again, I haven't existed in your world. I've existed in a world where critical decisions have to be made in short periods of time and stuff like that. I imagine there's a balance between kind of a sense of the reality of what you're actually doing out there, and then the benefit as you just spoke to, and it's bringing those guys home. It's that's what success is in that moment. So I imagine there's a little bit of excuse me, a mental battle that comes with that too. So
Oh yeah, and there's moments where there's like 7 seconds between like they need close air support fast. It could be like what we call a danger close shoot, which means that there is a chance, a risk of God forbid, fratricide or something like that. And that's that's the worst thing that could happen, in my opinion. But and there's a decision that happens from the pilot all the way back to the gunners in the back, to where like everything's not black and white. There is sometimes a gray area where there is some risk involved. And but at the same time, we have a saying where like the guys on the ground on the rounds, right, the JTAC and the GFC, but we on the switches. So you're making that split second decisions to let this 45-pound howitzer round come out the aircraft or not.
yeah, wow, that's crazy. So we have I have the Eve Bailey and the folks over there to help to thank for setting this whole thing up and getting us connected and everything. But one of the things that she mentioned in your bio that she kind of sent me, and to give me some background on you, was the 2018 Jolly Green Rescue Mission of the Year. Is that something you're comfortable sharing with us as far as what exactly that is?
Yeah, no problem. So the at this point in my career, I was on the rescue helicopter in the 41st Rescue Squadron, and the Jolly Greens, sort of that legacy goes back to the Green Feet, as they talk about. Basically, in Vietnam, these helicopters were landing these rice paddies, and by the time they had done rescue, like a downed airman or soldier, whatever the case was, and already got him out of there, there was always these two green footprints, it looked like, in the rice paddies from the two helicopters, and that's where the Jolly Green sort of comes from. And again, I felt like even on the gunship, like I wanted to get closer and closer to the actual fighting, right? The actual fight, like on the ground as close as I could be, and still support from the air. And we were East Africa, June 8th, 2018, and basically staying on 24/7 CASEVAC. And one of those situations where you can eat, and you sleep when you can sleep. And I'll just go into the details of what I can of that story. And basically, I went to the TOC to see like if everything was going okay, and it was going okay according to the intel lady. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna go back and get a tactical nap, on this 12-man tent. And I remember as soon as I hit the top bunk, I just heard my radio just blare this, attention on that scramble. And I run what's a quarter mile, which seemed like the longest quarter mile of my life, to the helicopter, and I put my gear on, my battle rattle, and we took off in about 3.5 minutes or so. And the PJs were on there as well. And basically we went into like a right-hand bank, and I just remember like I could see impacts on the ground, like 15, 20 feet, below us on the ground. And I couldn't see where it was coming from. But the guy on the left had his gun down, but he had a runaway gun from the Sear notch on the Gal 1850 cal. And then he fixed that almost immediately, which was awesome. Then I pulled the CMDS, the flare pins, which flares protect us against the surface to air heat seeking missiles. And and water had gotten that panel where it shorted it out, and then basically all these different fireballs just coming out the aircraft, simultaneously, and I could feel the heat from it. Like, surprised I had eyebrows left at that point in my career. And then yeah, and then the ground force commander and the JTAC, the comms were broken, and everything's going against us already into this fight. And so it's about a 13-minute flight till we get to the Casavac to the HLZ. And what it was there was 12 Al-Shabaab guys in a tree line, and the JTAC had marked the where for us to shoot with the purple smoke. And it's rare you do close air support, especially with a rescue asset, 50 cal and a helicopter. And so we did about 3 or 4 gun patterns, if I remember right. And then, to suppress the enemy, sort of fight our way in a little bit. And we landed, and we were lead, so we landed first. And they brought the first American in, put him against the ox tanks, and the PJ started giving him a tracheotomy. And then they brought in another Green Beret, put him beside me, and he took some eye shrapnel, so they had wrapped it at the diagonal type wrapping.
Yeah.
And then they brought in the partner nation guy who got shot in the stomach. And we take back off, and then immediately go back into the gun patterns, and we're shooting this tree line, and Trail had to pick up their 2 cat alphas for the whole the golden hour to get them back to higher probability of surviving. And then we egress the area, get back. I put more beans, bullets, gas in my helicopter as it's rotors are turning. Then we fly back, and they had one more. I think it was like a Cat Bravo, and then we provided cover fire for them while they picked him up. And we get back and land, and I remember the experienced gunner was like, he was like, Dyer, like, check the aircraft for bullet holes. And I was like, man, like thinking like this was really that close. It sort of hits you a little bit, right? And so no bullet holes, thank God. And then I get to the front of the aircraft, and the aircraft commander, I could see everything in his face, man. It's just white. That I realized in that moment that American had passed away. And once they got on the operating table, and I just remember thinking that one of the Air Force core values, man, is like service before self. And I never truly knew what those words meant till that day. Someone's brother, someone's son, someone's friend had made that ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. And
yeah,
I just, always sticks with me, that mission. And yeah, and we got to see the best side saving 5 guys, and then the worst side where one guy lost his life. And that will always stick with me.
Yeah, no, that's heavy for sure. Yeah. How many missions did you fly?
It was right about 200 combat missions between the the AC-130 and then the Pave Hawk.
Wow. That and in what kind of span of time did you fly that many?
So it's from 2010 to, or technically 2011, the fall there, to December of 21 is when I retired. So
okay, gotcha. Wow, that's a lot for sure. Golly, and to keep doing it, and as you've already alluded, seeing a whole nother side that your majority of people that are, especially Americans, that are bebopping around today, they have no idea. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, and it's because back then, especially in the gunships in USOCOM, we did 90 days on, 90 days off. So it was like by the time you're getting back, man, you're already like high-fiving somebody else going back, and there's this whole continuation of cycle. And then Admiral McCraven sort of came, and I believe it was like 2015 where he slowed a lot of that stuff down, and it was what we call one-to-one dwell when it was 90 to 90, then to once a year type deployment, which that helped a lot,
Yeah, for sure. So when you say you retired in 21, when you're exiting at that point and everything, leaving that world, what was that like for you? Because, and I know that this might take up even a good chunk of our conversation today, but coming out of that world and back into normal life, so to speak, for lack of a better term, what were some of the things that you had to deal with that?
Yeah, man, I remember sitting in that, filling out the infamous DD-214, this blanket of saying, hey, I served and all of that, right? And then usually these things are in these personnel type offices. And I remember it was the top floor MPF at Cannon Air Force Base. And I remember walking out, man, and like looking back, and there's no door handle on that door, right? So you can walk out, but you can never really get back in. And that sort of hit me like a ton of bricks in itself. And, and I remember just thinking like my sense of identity was gone, my why, my purpose, especially being on these type of jobs, and that was gone. And I had to realize like this machine goes on. And that was a very hard thing for me to grasp. And, dealing with some of the trauma from the things in the past, I developed a really bad drinking habit. What was once a weekend, a pint turned into a pint at least a night with some, sleeping medication, you name it, to go to sleep. And definitely just a lot of things I'm not proud of during those moments. And, my wife and daughter they recognize that. And my wife told me the ultimatum, like, hey, it's either the bottle or me and your daughter. And by the grace of God, I chose her and my daughter, and so thankful I did. And I started getting prolonged exposure therapy treatment. And what that is like basically they're going to get to the root of your trauma, what's causing it. Because I didn't want medication at the time. And you write your story out over and over and over, and you get to a point where you're comfortable being uncomfortable, sort of like conversing right now, like we're doing. And so you get to a point where you can just talk about it,
Yeah.
and then they even time you talking about it, which was, I didn't really understand that part of it, but it helps, and basically she's like, you should tell your story 100 times. And I said no 100 times. And finally, once I got out, I was like, you know what, like maybe she's right. Maybe I can pay it forward. Maybe if one person reads this book, Moonchild, that it gets help, that's a blessing, that's a win. And so I really wrote the book for two distinct reasons. One is to show the rest of America that this is the stuff that goes on when you're asleep, and two, if you're the veteran or first responder, these uncommon type of jobs, that we're all very normal men and women doing very uncommon, different type of things for this nation. And it's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay to do nothing about it, to take that tactical knee and to seek help. And yeah, man, I think part of helping is healing.
Yeah. I definitely think that from a mental health standpoint, you can relate it in your world to veterans. I can relate it in my world to first responders as well, just because that's, I'm encouraged by the sense that in today's world, it definitely seems like it's a little bit more normalized, and certainly there's plenty of resources out there and stuff. I get that there's still a sense of pride that comes with it, and guys don't feel like they need that kind of help or stuff like that, or that they shouldn't need that kind of help. I've been guilty of that. I've needed that kind of help before, and yeah, I'm glad that it's becoming more of a staple. I'll speak from my world at least. In the fire service, it's becoming more of a staple when we onboard new people, as far as helping them understand from the get-go, like, hey, these are the realities of what you're going to face in this world, and this is, these are the resources that are out there to help you cope with it, so that you're not going down, a bad path into 5-10 years, whatever it might be. So
yeah, and that's a good point. And I think especially in like the fire service and paramedic, the EMT side of things, right? Like you see every day sort of, the worst thing that can happen to someone. And I don't wish that on anybody, and I think it has gotten better as far as the stigma goes with all these type of jobs where, no one wants to be a soldier, right? For example, a ground guy, and be like, get a do not arm from your commander, or in flying, we call it the NIF, duty is not to include flying. But at the same time, man, if you're not healthy, man, like, it all starts with the brain, right? And the spirit and the mind, and I just remember there was always this point of clarity, like flying in the old 16th Special Operations Squadron. We had this doorway you would walk through, and it said, we who pass through these portals stand tall. And I just remember thinking, like, no matter what I had going on in my life, man, like no matter what it was, family, bills, finances, I would leave it there, and it was, to me, it was more symbolic than like a Notre Dame football player, like slapping the play like a champion and not sign before he goes out. It was just, that was a moment where I would just, turn that switch on, but the problems usually come when the dust settles, and that your sense of purpose and the why's gone is, how do you turn that switch off,
yeah, no, absolutely. I can relate. We we work 48 hours at a time, and then you got to turn that switch off to come home for 96, and then turn it back on to go back for another 48. And yeah, it's you're correct. We certainly have days that are, just kind of mundane, and just doesn't seem like a whole lot out of the ordinary happens. And then we have other days where that, you can relate to your world too. At a moment's notice, you're in a box and working on a sick kid or something like that, or in your sense, you're up in the air flying a mission when just a few minutes prior you were at base. So yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I think too, with the adrenaline part of that, like, how do what I think I read one time for the fire service, like one of the biggest killers was heart disease or heart attacks. I don't know if that's still true to this day, but
yeah, it's the heart conditions. Excuse me, got some in my throat today. Heart conditions are number 2. Cancer is now the leading cause. So that's pretty significant these days for us.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I was thinking one day when I read that, like, man, like it can't be healthy, I guess, to go from like dead sleep to like into a 3-story structure fire or something like that. In a moment's notice, like that is something that I think the rest of like these, I guess, a common job would never sort of understand that part of you. sort of chase that adrenaline away because it's a tool that helps you in those moments, you know.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's almost almost a little bit addictive from that standpoint, right? You want that
Oh, yeah.
adrenaline rush and everything like that. So I can, like I said, I can relate. So what? And I didn't really ask you this earlier, but before we get into the book, before we talk a little bit more about that, was there a driving force or a reason that in 2021 you decided that was it? You were done.
Yeah, yeah, and I had to put on my 20th anniversary mark there to Iraq for my last. I went back to gunships to do that deployment, and basically we burned holes in the sky, man. I remember like, man, this is boring. Like I miss the good old days, right? And I realized later now these are all jobs like you never want to have to do, but at the same time, like if someone's number's called and they're back against the wall, you want to be the man or woman on that gunship to get them out, right? And
Yeah.
it was over, and that's when I got back and I was bitter, I was angry. I don't know, I was turning into this alcoholic sort of, right? And basically I'd hit the button out of anger, and an emotional decision in 5 seconds, and that was it. I was
Mm.
getting out of the Air Force within that year, and yeah, and that was it, man. And that's when a lot of the avalanche of just alcoholism, you name it, man, and bad thoughts and stuff like that.
Yeah. No, I can. We all want to be the guy on the front line. I feel like if you're
Oh, yeah.
passionate about it and a go getter, um, one of the things previously in my career, I don't ride an ambulance anymore, but when I did, it was you know, I I was just for some reason I would always get the pediatric calls. Like if I was on the box,
Yeah.
like you could count on there being a pediatric kid call or something like that. And I ran some bad kid calls, and those mess with me. But at the end of the day, it was like I ran so many, I'm good at them. Like
Yeah.
I'm in my mind, that was a battle I had to fight on. Why is it always me? And then the other side of it was, okay, well, out of some of these medics that could have gone on that call instead of me, I'm the one that can give this kid the best outcome just because, you know, the way that God aligned it all in my life.
Yeah.
I'm the guy that's always there when it happens, and there's a reason for that, and it sucks, and it's a burden you got to bear, but I can relate to that a little bit from that standpoint, so
Yeah, man, that was beautifully put too. And in a way, it's like, I still ask God this question, and I'm sort of getting to that answer one of these days. But like, why does God let good things happen to bad people? And let's take your case for example. That send me verse, like that's a very powerful verse, and it's there for a reason. And I think God gives those toughest battles to men like you. And what's different, like a firefighter's a paramedic's DNA, right, where they run towards these situations when everyone else runs out. And I think it's in a way it's a gift from God, and some people may look at that as a blessing and a curse, but in the end I have to believe it's for the greater of good of our brothers and sisters. You know what I mean? It's a good thing.
no, I completely agree. I definitely there were days that were certainly harder than others, and situations that most humans should. I hope nobody else is in that situation having to make some of the decisions I had to make, with one of those little ones. But it's at the end of the day, there's also positive outcomes that could have gone a whole
Oh,
lot
yeah.
differently, otherwise, and you got to focus on those. So
Yeah, and I think too, like something I haven't mentioned yet. The really the cornerstone of my healing process was I realized, God let me get to that point where I turned to everything. The bottle, psychiatry is great and everything. Don't get me wrong, but like I turned to everything except for Jesus. And in a way, He put me in that isolation before elevation. And one of my favorite new quotes is like, God will put you back together in front of those who broke you. And I heard that the other day, and I like to change that to God will put you back together in front of what situation or what vice broke you.
yeah, no, that's very well said for sure. So you spoke briefly about the book Moonchild, but let's dive into that in a little bit more detail as far as because I know I know from personal experience, whether it's articles or I might be currently working on something a little bit bigger, but that's beside the point. I know that it is a commitment and a lot of work to go from just thoughts rolling around your head to actually putting it on paper and going through the processes to make it available for everyone out there. So what was that journey like for you as far as actually getting that book off the ground rolling for everybody to be able to hear your story?
Oh yeah, no. Once I got out and the dust settled, and what would happen every time I had that strong craving to drink, that really never goes away, to be honest. And that urge, I would pick up a pen instead of that bottle, man, and I would write down whether it's a napkin, notepad, whatever the case is, to the Charlotte's Web of emotional words, and wake up and try to make sense of it all, of 2 decades of war and everything that comes with that. And then when I hit that realization, like, man, like I think I could make this into a book and could pay it forward and someone could read it and get help. And I reached out to on LinkedIn. I searched something to the effect of like, editor for military stories. And Holly McKay, a war journalist, actually responded within minutes. And I was in Walmart, texting her back and forth. And next thing you know, I had a phone appointment with her and told her my idea for the book and what it's for. And there was a Word document going back and forth. And she did a really good job of sort of pulling those the hard parts to say and help me say the loud part out loud and gave my words teeth, if you will. And then she recommended a publisher. And I guess from start to finish, that was Robbie Grayson from Trademark Media. But from start to finish, it was about 7 months, which is, I guess, relatively fast. And to be honest, it is a very short read. I've had some people say laughed and cried in the same 2 hours and they finished it. So it's like a Sunday type thing, but I'll take it, and it was an awesome experience. And I tell people, man, no matter what your job is, where everybody's got a story, every veteran, first responder has a story, whatever that is, bleed it on the page, man. And that's therapeutic, and that's helping, and helping's healing.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. So tell me where the name came from, Moonchild.
No problem. So one of my favorite poems is Stay a While, Moonchild by Rita Clint. And I was born on a full moon, April 7th of 82. And remember my dad told me that. And then flying on the gunship, especially, we mostly come out at night, and mostly. And then basically there was, the moon would highlight the terrain. It would highlight ground to ground tracer fires, ground to air tracer fires. And we have in flying what you call a get well point. So the thing about gunships is you're doing this left-hand orbit, sort of like NASCAR with guns the whole night. And it's easy to sort of get lost on like what part of the orbit you're on and stuff like that and navigating. And so a get well point for me, like, okay, what side is the moon on at this point, and I know where this area, this operation overheaded. And so it's almost like a lighthouse for me, and I just remember thinking too, like during, for example, that Casabac, there's situations in life where everything's against you, man. It could be the weather, emergency procedures, gun malfunctions, you name it, that on that day, your very worst day is a day that everybody that depends on you needs you to be the very best you can be. And I just realized thinking like, man, that's those darkest nights, those moments, that's when that moon burns the brightest for me. And that's sort of I guess the theme of the story there behind the moon.
Well, that's an awesome story behind the name, and the name itself, I think, is just I don't know, it really pops, and I like it. But yeah,
thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So, so coming back into the world, like you kind of have this journey, you have these areas of growth and change and stuff, and you got to kind of refocus on life. You kind of have to start over in some aspects and kind of reacclimate and everything. Where has that led you today? And I'm mainly thinking from the standpoint of, if there are other veterans or folks who are listening to the show and listening to your story, where has all of this led you today? What does your life look like today? If that makes sense.
That's an awesome question. I'm glad you asked that, because the other day I got asked this in a very similar way, indirect way, but they're like, what's your mission now? And like, what plane are you flying on? And who's beside you on that mission? And I told the guys, like, I was like, the mission now is being the best dad I could be, best husband I could be in this mission of life. And my co-pilot's my wife at this point. And that's finding those exciting moments in the calm, and being the best friend I could be to somebody, best wingman I could be to somebody, and helping somebody else out who's had similar struggles. That's my whole why now.
That's awesome. And I imagine that there's been a lot of positive reactions coming from a book like this and that kind of stuff, or at least that's what it strikes me as. So I imagine you've gotten a lot of feedback in that regard.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, it's been sort of like overwhelming. It's a good thing though, because like people keep emailing and texting, guys I used to fly with, and men and women, like, hey, like, Anthony, just so same struggles I've had, I just haven't done anything about it, and I decided today to get help, and especially guys that are getting towards the tail end of 20 years are getting out, and you see that common theme. And I did had one experience where I had a friend call me I hadn't talked to in years, and had to talk them off a ledge essentially, and was able to get them to the VA hospital in South Carolina there and get help. But it definitely, you see God using you. Like when you pray that prayer, like, God use me for whatever your purpose may be. But be careful, because it happens. He holds me to that. I will say that.
No, he certainly does. He has a funny way of doing those kind of things for
Oh yeah.
sure. So so what?
But,
Go ahead.
no, I was saying, yeah. God often works in very unconventional ways. Is what I tell people.
No,
Whatever I
absolutely.
think I have planned, I'm sure He laughs at it. And when He tells you something, it's loud.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. So what have been, if you don't mind sharing, again, for anybody who might be listening that this could help with, what have been some specific coping mechanisms in your life that you've been able to implement to help you? Because and you mentioned earlier, like, instead of picking up the bottle, picking up a pen. But what have been some of those things that have really made a big difference in your life since coming back?
Yeah, we talked about writing definitely in itself is therapeutic, and I tell people, surrounding yourself by your four quarters, not 100 pennies. And what I mean by that is those people that truly know you, the people that know you, what you're saying without you saying a word, like the friends that ask, like, "Hey, how you doing, really, man?" Versus like, "Hey, how's it going, man?" Just the way they approach you. Like the good thing about the fire service and military and all these type of jobs is there's friends all across the world that would pick up that phone, and it's realizing that fact that we all are all sort of our brother's keeper, and that someone will pick up that phone, and having faith in that, and that's really helped me. Just that thought of that, of leaning on the men and women I used to fly with to pull me out of the ditches.
No, the people who are closest to you, they can definitely they can help you, and then they can also even when you're trying to bottle something up, they can see that, and they can normally pull it out of you or help you out, and it wasn't even in a bad way. It was like even the other day for me at the firehouse,
Yeah.
I'd had I'd been on the phone with about a bunch of stuff, going on in the department and some other things happening, and I was kind of done with the day, But even just walking in, one of my guys looks at me and he can read my face. He's like, "Dude, you good?" Like, just that in of itself, like he recognized just by my face that something was out of the ordinary right there, and
Oh yeah.
that's them trying to make a difference right there. So yeah, you gotta lean on that. You gotta take advantage of that for sure.
Oh yeah, and I believe iron sharpens iron, right? And those sort of what I was getting at earlier. It's important to surround yourself by those four quarters. And what I mean by that is, I'd rather have four quarters than 100 pennies when it comes to friends and people that I look up to, people who truly show up in those moments.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So what what would you did a little bit of homework on you before having you on the show and everything. I listened to some other shows that you've been on and everything, and one of the things that kept coming up was legacy, and I'd like to talk about that a little bit too, as far as what everybody that does something in your world, veterans service, especially the level of military service that you were delivering for such a long time. Everybody thinks about their legacy that they're leaving, right?
Right.
And what would you define that as, or what kind of legacy do you think that you have left, or you are trying to leave now?
I would say the legacy that I'm definitely trying to leave is I would be a man of my word, and a man that strive to help others, and realize in the end it's not about accolades or my accomplishments. It's about being there for someone in those darkest moments, and also a guy who wasn't afraid to take risks. I heard a quote the other day, and it was empires are built on taking risks, nine to fives are built on avoiding them. And I don't know, to be honest, if I fully agree with that, but I would say legacies are built on taking risks, and nine to fives are built on avoiding them. So there is, you know, the damn few men and women who want to take that risk and leave this big footprint in the world. And that's legacy's priceless in my eyes.
Yeah. I think it has a lot to do, and as you've said, with the impact you have on other people, and the
Right.
people around you, the cultures that you find yourself in throughout your life and everything like that. I feel like it has a more of an impact on that, because at the end of the day, your world, flying as a special missions aviator, my world as a first responder, at the end of the day, when we hang it up, the very next day they will have somebody else riding in our seat, to
Oh yeah.
to fill the spot. But as far as the impression you make as the individual who did ride in that seat on the other people around you, I feel like that's what's remembered, and that's what at least that's what you're trying to build off of, and to really have an impact on. So
Oh yeah, as far as the Appalachian sort of things, like I remember growing up, my grandfather asked me at one point, "Do you remember your great grandfather?" And I probably should, but I don't, to be honest with you. And the point he was making is sort of what Marcus Aurelius says, like what we do in life echoes in eternity, and that's why I don't never wanted really a 9 to 5 type job. I just wanted to do something that, in my mind at least, thought that mattered.
yeah, no, I completely agree with you on that. I couldn't work behind a desk, man. I just
Yeah, me neither,
it
bro.
would be so challenging for me to be able to do that. It's certainly a lot of stressors that come with it, but I also like showing up to work and not knowing what the day's going to hold. You
Oh
gotta
yeah,
you gotta take it as it comes and adapt with it, and there's a part of that I enjoy too. So yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
Do you mind me asking what you're doing for a living or for work, or are you doing anything right now?
Yeah. So my job now is the flight simulators on Canada Air Force Base. Basically, I help build scenarios and scripts for, like, for example, like the AC-130 gunship crews, and it could be emergency procedures. You could sort of malfunction, and basically it's an $80 million video game if you think about it. Virtual reality, like it moves and everything. It's pretty awesome, man. And you can put different weather in there. You could put threats in there, threats to shoot at them. And you basically you put them in the situation to where, like, when they get down range and all hell's breaking loose, they're like, "Hey, I've been here before." And in best case scenario, someone will get back and be like, "Hey, thank you for that script. That scenario got me out of a bad spot." So yeah, it's in a way paying it backwards, I guess, is what I'm trying to say with that. And not really flying, but I'm still 1 foot sort of outside the door with it, and still see some of the men and women I used to fly with, which is rare, but it's awesome.
Yeah.
So
No, I would imagine there's for sure some value for somebody like you to be in that position to like you just said, be able to create or have some influence on situations that you've lived, and to prep people for that in a teachable environment, I should say. So I can only imagine the value with that for sure.
yeah, I enjoy it, and and these type of jobs, right? Like, you want them to get to that point where all hell's breaking loose, whether it's on the fire ground, and that's a very dynamic thing in itself. And these operations and stuff like that. There's a point in all these stories you realize, like, whether it's a pilot or firefighter or whatever the case is, you realize there's that realization, like, hey, like, I could take a second, like, I've been here before, like, I know what to do, and
Yeah.
it's almost robotic at that point, right? And there is a lot of benefit to that, and I enjoy it. So
Yeah, and people also just being able to, if and I'm imagining a little bit here, applying it to your world and the picture you just painted for me, but people being able to pick your brain and then to watch things be executed, and then being able to hopefully have it tucked back in the back of your brain. I relate it to in the fire service. I think of on my previous crew, we ran a fire where I had to I was driving the ladder truck, and instead of pulling into this cul-de-sac and everything, and having front ways just flying in there like everybody else, I took the time to stop and actually back that truck down the street slowly and put it in the exact spot it needed to be. A minor detail, but makes a huge difference as far as what we can utilize the piece of equipment for. And later on, when I was leaving that crew, and going to my new assignment, one of the guys that was on that fire with me is like, "Man," he goes, I hate that you're leaving." He's like, I would have never thought to do something like that. You thought to do that." He's like, "You can slow your mind down like that. I can't." And I'm like, but now you have the situation in your mind that you can apply the next time you see it, right? The next time you see it, you're going to think, "Oh, I remember this," and you're going to be able to apply it too. It does, you might not have done it in the real world yet, but you've seen it applied. And I was like, you have enough mental ability to be able to forecast that and be able to recognize that and apply it too. So I'm rambling a little bit, but that's just what I relate it to in my own world. So
But yeah, and that's some good points. I think a lot of these jobs, there's something that you may have been shown once that could save somebody's life, and that's but it somehow always makes it. You ever notice in those situations, it makes it way to the front of your brain, like when it counts, right? And it could be a mentor, it could be an example, like in your case where show someone how to sort of think outside the box, and
Yeah.
that's a valuable lesson in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. Well, man, I got a couple other questions in closing, but excuse me. One of them is that this, even though we've taken a lot of time to dive into your story and everything, this is a hunting show, So and you mentioned before we started recording that while you don't have a lot of hunting and outdoor experiences or anything like that, that you do have one experience down in Texas actually that you've been on previously. So I wanted to at least hear about that and hear that story from you from your hunt trip down here.
Yeah, no problem. So we have these squadrons. We have like a yearly Christmas party, right? And as some of the prizes they give away is sometimes like a hunting trip or something like that, or maybe a fishing trip. And I had won this aoudad hunt and somewhere in Texas. I can't remember. I can get back to you where exactly where it was at, but it was an aoudad, and I don't even know what aoudad was, man. and I get to this place, and there's like these animals you'd see in like Africa or something. It's crazy. And I'd never actually been hunting it. I mean, don't get me wrong, back home I had a BB gun and there was rabbits and squirrels and we would eat them every now and then, but nothing big, right? Big game. And I remember, I think it was maybe a 270. It was my buddy's 270, man. I just remember like it was one of the best experiences of my life, man, because it's just you and your buddy in this tree stands the way I looked at it, and some beers, at the time. And yeah, man, shot it, man, and we ate it and everything. It had a very different taste than I would have imagined, like a deer would taste or something like that. But yeah, it was an awesome experience. And there's Texas is always good about giving stuff like that away and these sort of prizes for these type squadrons, and we appreciate and all you guys in that hunting world support. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but that's part of the reason I think that we got connected. We do a veteran hunt every year, where we select a vet and take him somewhere on a deer hunt somewhere in the United States. And this last year it was in West Virginia, and we do a podcast with them, while we're there in camp hanging out with them and everything. And for most of these guys, they've never been on a podcast before, so it's just you're kind of surreal in that regard. But this last year it was in West Virginia, and I guess Eve Bailey and them, she mentioned that when she reached out to me, as far as they had heard that episode, and that's kind of what was connecting dots between a hunting show and your story as a veteran and stuff like that was them seeing us post that veteran episode. So yeah, we have a special place in our heart for vets and military service too. And man, hunting in the outdoors, it's an outlet. It's a for a lot of people, it's a chance to escape and decompress and just be out in the outdoors. And some of the best times of my life have been 25 miles back in the backcountry. It's just it's incredible when you're out there. It's you and God, it feels like. So
yeah, and I'm so glad even that even Sophia and those guys was awesome company, what those guys do, and reaching out to you and finding that story. And I think there's something about hunting and fishing and these outdoor things where like God always reminds us he's still God, and he's got it.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more, man. Well, man, before I completely wrap this thing up and put a bow on it, is there anything that we've missed? Anything else you'd like to say? And if not, would you mind sharing just a little bit more, some advice for any vets that might be listening to this, that might be inspired by your story, and man, they're just like, man, where do I start? Where do I start? I need something. Where does it begin?
Awesome question, brother. Now, I like to tell my first story ever of flying on an AC-130. And I'm sure you may have heard this before, but my first time ever stepping on an AC-130, doing the pre-flight, actually flying, like the instructor beside me, it went so bad to where he said something to the effect of, "You're the reason they have to brief seatbelts on airliners," right? And we get to the end of the story, and I'm licking my wounds, and he's like, what's the most important word in the dictionary? I was like, man, I don't know. I don't even know where I'm at right now. He's like, perseverance. And he's like, I want you to think about, what that word means to you and show up next flight, ready to fight. And, and the next flight went great, and I never looked back. And then as far as the roots part of my story, man, back home, I was at a basketball camp. This guy who's a Lenore Ryan coach, I believe is where he coached at, but he shoots like 100 free throws. And I swear to God, I've never seen nothing like this. This guy didn't miss, man. It was insane. And he was older at the time too. And like, And the whole point he was making, it wasn't just about basketball. He's like, the key to success in life is anything is repetition. So I would gladly tell anybody out there struggling that with those two words, perseverance and repetition, meaning getting the help and the reps of that, then man, you can go anywhere you want to go.
Absolutely. Very well said. Well, man, is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap it up?
Last statement I got for you is if you're going through it, man, no matter what the troubles are, just remember Henry Ford said an aircraft takes off against the wind, not with it. So that's all I got, sir. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you, man. And I forgot to ask you this too. Where can folks find your book, Moonchild? Where can they pick one up?
No problem. So it's on Amazon as well as Barnes & Noble. Then Trademark Media has a site where you just click on the flag, the country, and it'll take you to the Amazon link.
Perfect. Well, guys, make sure that you guys go pick up a copy and read more about Anthony's story and everything. Man, I really appreciate this. I thank you very much for coming on the podcast and sharing your story. And yeah, this has been awesome.
Thank you, Sam. It's been like I said, a real privilege and honor to be here, man. And I think what you guys do, especially for the veterans, is great, man. And keep doing you, man. You guys are awesome.
Appreciate it. Well, for our listeners, thank you all for tuning in to another Fall Obsession podcast. Subscribe if you haven't already. And with that, I'll wrap it up and be back with you guys again next week for another episode. I'll catch you then.